All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. This is for our Open Mainframe Education Student User Group here on July 2nd, 2025. Today we have our guest speaker, Christina Shearer, and she is a systems programmer with Ensono. And as you can see here, she's had a lot of experience, started with IBM and ended up moving over to Kyndryl, where she continued to do systems programmer work, and now is one of the team leads for the systems programmer teams in at Ensono. Christina, welcome. Thank you for being here today. Would you like to, can you give us a little bit of background? Tell us your story a little bit, high level story there, quick. Where you started and how your journey went about.
So basically, I've always worked with computers in one aspect or another. Um, I did work for Dell and HP there for a while as a support help desk. When I moved to Columbia, Missouri, I was given the opportunity to do the IBM apprenticeship for mainframes. Um, got into that, decided I really liked it. And then from there, after I graduated, took on several clients there at IBM, then transitioned to Kyndryl with those same clients because it was just a spinoff of the same company. Um, and then I'm now at Ensono, and I have one dedicated client that I work with that is a high profile client. But my job journey has been apprenticed to ZOS systems programmer to, logical security, which is the rack app database and all that, to now senior systems programmer and team lead, and then possibly moving into management. So it's been pretty fast track.
Wow, yeah, it's quite the journey. In fact, uh, a little fun fact there is Christina and I technically started our mainframe journey together while at IBM. Uh, and before that section of IBM became Kyndryl. So we started there in the apprenticeship together within like a week or two. And so I had the pleasure of getting to work with Christina. Now, Christina, where do you think, or I guess not where do you think, where did your interest come for working in a technical field?
I like non-monotony. I like ever changing, ever learning. I like solving puzzles, problems. And with the mainframe, we've constantly got application upgrades, system upgrades. So there's always something to be learned. And then also, I like the fact of when there is issues, being able to delve into it and diagnose and fix the problem.
Now, did that start at like an early age? Where did the introduction to computers start? I know for me, like I was always breaking things on the computer before my parents were like, "Hey, you're not allowed to do that." And then I ended up getting into a career with computers anyways.
So I'm going to age myself. My first computer was a green screen Commodore 64. And my first programming book was the DOS word games. So that's where it all
Awesome.
started.
And then it just stuck and then kept
Yeah.
going. That's
Yes.
awesome. So when you were deciding to go for a career in technology, was it kind of like, oh, mainframe? Was that in your sights at all?
it was it was not, excuse me, but I was not I enjoyed doing the IT problematic work for Dell and HP, but it after a while it gets very monotonous because it's the same problems over and over and over again. So my father actually worked for IBM on the other side, the GTS side, GBS side, sorry. And he said that I perhaps maybe wanted to look into mainframe. And I did. And that's where it ended up at. So
And about how much mainframe experience or knowledge did you have coming into the apprenticeship?
None, none whatsoever. And you going through the apprenticeship as well, there was a lot of people from different backgrounds. So it's not something like we were discussing before. It's not something that a lot of universities teach. But if you're into coding, you're into an ever-changing, ever-learning environment, um, problem solving, mainframe is actually, to me, it's fun. So,
Yeah, I agree. I know for me, coming from a distributed background, having worked distributed for 4 years before I came to mainframe, it was almost like I had to, and I'm going to use a computer term here, like I had to overwrite what I had learned previously because before coming to mainframe, it was like you had your hard drive, your CPU, and your memory, and suddenly I'm being thrown into this LPAR environments and so much more. Was it a similar feeling for you?
no,
No,
not
of course
really.
not. Of course not.
Because I looked at LPARs as like a dual boot computer.
Ah,
That's how I looked at it. And your CPU is basically performance and capacity team. Your Windows applications are basically just that, application. The operating system, mainframe has ZOS. What does that stand for? Z operating system. So for me, it was just easier to think of it as a computer on a larger scale. So
that's great. I like the way you worded that. And, so you said you started to like mainframe. Would you say that the joy of mainframe is kind of what's kept you in the business and sticking around with it? What have been your favorite parts of joining the mainframe field?
const- constantly learning and problem solving. Because for me, it's not monotonous. It's not like a day to day, you're going to be doing the exact same thing, you know, upgrades and um, security and stuff like that. There's always changes to be made. There's always output to be looked through to, make changes and that so everything works correctly. Um, that's the big thing is it's to me, it's not monotonous, you know. If I wanted
Right.
monotonous, I would have gone to data entry.
There you go. There you go. Now, I've talked to some other professionals before, who didn't work on mainframes, and they said they get a similar joy out of experience on the distributed side of like working with regular servers and whatnot. How could you say that your experience and enjoyment has been different in the mainframe space?
Well, like I said, when I was doing computer support, at the very beginning, it was fun because it was always, somebody coming up with something, that was wrong. And then after a while, it just got monotonous because it was the same issues over and over and over again. With mainframe, it's once you fix that issue, there's a possibility of there being a different issue. And then you have to go that way. And also the possibilities of remediation on certain things. You can offer the client, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. You always have multiple options on what the client themselves want to go down. So for me, like I said, I just enjoy learning and problem solving. So mainframe is just comfortable for me.
I like that. Now, wh- um, with with that said, have would you say that given today's mainframe, direction where it is, where it's headed, I almost feel like you kind of have to know a little bit about everything. Would you agree with that? Would you say that there's anything else to that?
You do, but that comes with, so the way most of the shops are run is with Zorbane and Oxley separation of duties. So you need to be able to work with other teams that have access to something perhaps you need to look at, or they can change and you can't change. So you have to be able to not just focus on the one area, but know who else to reach out to get answers, for problems and work with other groups. So you do have to know at least what the other groups do, you know?
Right.
So, but from a separation of duty standpoint, there's a lot of things that, let's say I need somebody in DB2 to run a report for me because I don't have access. I'm not going to request that access because it doesn't have anything to do with my position. So I have to go to them to be like, hey, I need this. So it's all about teamwork, collaboration, and communication. And that's big in the company that I work for. And it's true because you have to, if they're having an issue, they need to know who to reach out to. If you're having an issue, so yeah, you need to know the moving parts, but you don't need to know them so detailed because a lot of times you're not going to have access.
Absolutely. So this is one part that I remember when we were working together at IBM. I remember there was a day that you came over to me and you told me kind of like the process that you were going through to learn and to skill up with mainframe. And I really admired that, and it's one that I adopted myself, for how you went from y- learning, like, not just like what mainframe was, but how you skilled up as a ZOS systems programmer.
So basically, I'm just going to say this: IBM Red Books are great to read if you want to fall asleep. So if you have a question, I mean, you can YouTube it, run Master the Mainframe. That is an amazing project. Um, but yeah, I did a lot of YouTube. I did a lot of, research on stuff like that, that I did it in chunks, but it was easier to remember than if I just took the IBM Red Book and just read through it. So it's one of those things. If you decide that with Master the Mainframe, I will say this: if you've never done mainframe before, that is a good way to decide, hey, is this for me? But it's also a good way to help you know, hey, I want to do this. Oh, it's ZOS. Oh, no, I like this. It's DB2 SQL, and it helps you understand the different teams and what you actually like, you know.
Right.
So,
And to clarify, Master the Mainframe was what Z Explorer is now today. So when we went through it, it was called Master the Mainframe. Now it's called Z Explorer. So if anyone's like, "Oh, what's this Master the Mainframe?" It's Z Explorer, and it's quite different than what it was before. Now you helped back while it was still Master the Mainframe. You helped on helping with not only administer the system, but helping people with questions, etc. Right?
yeah. Yeah, a lot of it was, set up. A lot of it was I'm reading these instructions, but I'm not getting what the output actually is. And so I would walk them through section by section and explain it. And then they would have that aha moment, be like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Right. So yeah, Taylor, I'll turn it. I think you've got some extra questions as well. I'll turn it over to you if you wanted to go ahead and start asking those questions.
I always have questions. I always have a bunch of questions. So, I'm really interested actually. I might be skipping ahead a little bit, but I'll reel it back after this. You mentioned you were doing a lot of troubleshooting in the community and doing a lot of education. That takes time, and that takes like a good amount of energy, and you are very, very, very busy all the time too. So I'm curious, like, why were you investing in the community? What did you want to get out of that, and what did you want others to get out of that? Because that's kind of going above and beyond. So I'm really interested in kind of hearing more about that, actually.
I want people to understand that if this is what they want, it's not unattainable.
So when you say unattainable, is there ever a point where you're like, maybe like, because you mentioned that before, of like there's this idea or feeling that you've had where it's like anybody can do this, was there a moment where you were like, I can do this, like that you might have not felt before? I know you mentioned earlier, you're like, oh, it was an easy transition, but it sounds like there might have been some sort of feeling of like, oh wow, I actually can do this. Like I'm good at this. Is that like resonate with you at all?
I knew that I could do it just because I've dealt with so much DOS programming. Green screens are nothing to me. But JCL, learning JCL, Rex, assembler, reading output.
Mhm.
It was the day that I was reading output and I had that, like I said, aha moment. Was like,
Right.
oh, I can read this like a sentence. It's this, this, and this. And then I go over here and go, oh, this needs to be fixed. Oh, now it runs. So that was pretty much yeah, this I could do this.
So it's like learning another language. Like they say that you can when like just like another language like versus English versus French, like you dream about it and all of a sudden you're like you're fluent in it. So you had this moment where you're like looking at everything, you're like, holy crap, like I can understand this and I can read it. How did that make you feel? Like were you proud? Were you like
I
yeah.
was because the biggest thing is if you can read the output, that means that you can understand what the variables are, which means that you can go back into the code
Hmm.
and know, okay, this works, this variable doesn't work. It is a variable. I can change it. So it's connecting all the dots.
You
Yeah.
know, sorry to interrupt
Oh
here,
yeah.
but I had a question spurring like because as you were going through that, Christina, what would you say was probably the hardest thing for you to wrap your head around in your learning journey?
Assembler.
That's a good one.
Classic response. I
Yeah, I don't think anyone would disagree.
Yeah, assembler. Um,
I've yeah, sorry. Go on.
no, you're fine. That was the hardest part. But at first, it was reading the output because it has a lot of stuff in there. And the other thing is learning how to use the tools that are already implemented on the mainframe. Like quick ref, where you can throw in you know, error code number and it'll give you the information instead of having to go to Google and Google it. You know, that's the other thing is using the tools that are already implemented on the system.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Do you have any other questions, Phil? Sorry, I was cutting you off earlier.
No. I that one just came up as she was explaining that. I was like, I got to know which one was the hardest, and that was definitely the hardest in my book too. So
Yeah. I one day I think we'll eventually meet somebody who's like, oh yeah, assembler was easy, and I'll just be like blown away. And it hasn't happened yet. And I don't
Maybe
think
then
it will.
they could explain it to us.
I've met
yes.
a few that actually have been okay with assembler, but then again, they retired like 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back a bit, I don't know if we already covered it, but your IBM apprenticeship typically lasts 2 years, right?
Correct.
How long did it take you to complete that?
1 year.
1 year. Okay. Is that common?
No.
No. Okay. Can you tell me a bit about what was different about you doing it in 1 year versus people doing it in 2 years? Because I think that's quite the accomplishment.
Time management.
Okay. So what did that look like for you when you say time management? How do you condense a 2 year program into 1 year and still like stay sane and learn all the materials? Like, and time management's a very general thing, and I think there's a lot more to it than just like I manage my time well, but at the same time, maybe not.
It's really not
Okay.
because with time management, basically, I would set my goal for the day of I am going to get through these things. And those were the things that I would work on. I didn't have, and Phil can attest to this. I had a tendency to tell people to go away, stop sitting on my desk. No, I don't need anything.
Yep. Yep. I would see the look and be like, yeah, I'm gonna stay over at my desk today.
But seriously, it was a lot of time management. It also comes down to the fact that I think that I had a little bit of an edge with my mindset. And so doing the projects and learning came a lot quicker to me. There's some of us that we can look at a book and we can do the ask. And then there's some people who actually need to watch someone and they need someone to shadow them. I'm not one of those people. Just give me the instructions and I get it done. So it comes also down to the way people learn. For me, like I said, it was just easier for them just to give me the instructions and I took care of it. Other people that were going through the apprenticeship, they needed someone to show them hands-on, and they also sometimes needed people to shadow them. So that also comes into play.
Was that a mindset shift, or did you always have that mindset?
I've always had that mindset. I work on my own truck, so I use manual.
Mhm.
So I think with every way of learning, there's like pros and cons. Was there any like difficulties with your learning style during the apprenticeship that you had to overcome? Maybe it was like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna get through all of this, and then you just hit a wall and you're just like, holy crap, like I have no clue where to go from here. Like did you encounter situations like that? How did you get through it?
I did, because there was some verbiage that was misleading. My mentor, all I did was message him and be like, hey, it says this, what does it really mean? And then he'd be like this, and I'm like, okay, and then I go. Because that's the big thing too, is a lot of people have a tendency when they get stuck, there's a pride issue. There's a pride issue where they don't want other people to know that they don't understand something. I don't ever take that into consideration. If I don't know it, I'm going to say, I don't know it. Can you explain it? You know, that's a big thing too.
Right. And I feel like that's a good segue to the question of, what have been some of your greatest barriers in your career? What have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced?
Working with older systems programmers, that it's you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Because there's certain things that we learned, in our apprenticeship and stuff, because some of the tools were newer, some of the other, applications were newer, that type of thing. And that was a lot of roadblocks, because sometimes they have a tendency to gatekeep all of their knowledge. But in the same aspect, when you try to add to that knowledge, they look at you and go, you've only been doing this for a year, you don't know what you're talking about. And at that point, all you can do is prove them wrong and move on.
Right. Did you ever have, I don't know, per se, anybody who kind of got in your way that like really tried to, I don't know what the right word is here, but like, I don't know, make it challenging to progress by any means? I guess
Yeah,
that's kind of the same
yeah,
question.
yes. I'll be blatantly honest, my manager removed them.
Right.
So
Yeah. No, that's it's and it's because, they probably weren't being very professional, right? You needed,
no,
because it's all about being professional and respectful.
it is. And the biggest issue is like I said from the beginning, mainframe is an ongoing updating thing. There's always going to be new things to learn. If a systems programmer tells you, I know everything there is, they're lying.
Right.
So, because you will never know everything, because every year the operating systems change, the applications change, everything changes, like right now, we have a client that is going to GDPS. That's something new. It's always something new. No one will ever know everything there is to know about mainframe, ever.
So speaking a little bit about like things that are new, you had your career trajectory kind of started you off on, a system programmer for ZOS, and then as you transitioned throughout your years, you ended up doing stuff with logical security, right?
Yes.
That's kind of like can you tell me a little bit because I haven't heard of I'm not familiar with logical security. I figured it probably has something to do with ACF or like RACF or something like along those lines, but I might
Yes,
be wrong. And I'm
it
not afraid of
is.
being okay. Okay. Can you tell me about what it was like to switch from the not silo, but from ZOS to security for ZOS? Was there like new sets of barriers?
So the reason I ended up with logical security over in Kyndryl is because they needed a backup logical security person, and I was ZOS.
Mhm.
So the client signed off on a risk letter saying, yes, give her all the same permissions as logical security. And so I started learning logical security while still being a ZOS programmer. When I moved to Ensono, I was a ZOS systems programmer. That's what I was hired on for. And when they decided to go with a dedicated logical security team, they used me to fill that niche because I already had the experience. It's taking care of the security as far as from a RACF database type of point of view. So, your users, your groups, your profiles, your resource classes, um, all of that type of stuff.
So one thing I think is interesting is your path from ZOS to logical security. It wasn't like you just kind of took on things and then it ended up being logical security, right? So you just took on
Yes,
some more things. Was that your goal, or is that just kind of how it played out?
that's my personality. You can ask Phil. That's my personality. If somebody has a need and it's something that I know that I can do, I offer myself up to take care of it.
Do
So
you ever feel over? So before I ask this question, I'm going to set it up with something, and I want you to kind of give your opinion on this. I've seen a lot of system programmers lately who have that's just been taking on more and more and more applications and more knowledge because there's just, people are retiring and whatnot, and only so many people have the experience to handle multiple, applications and responsibilities in the mainframe, and it kind of stretches them thin. So I'm kind of curious, like, with you and your personality taking on so many responsibilities, do you ever feel like you're being stretched too thin, or are you just like, I can handle it, you know?
well, since I've moved over to the logical security area,
Mhm.
and I'm the team lead there, the team that I have made sure that they have all cross-trained each other in all of their areas of expertise and every type of thing like that. I
Okay.
know all of the things. So basically, if I have my hands in a project and someone contacts me and says, hey, I need this, I say, okay, you need to contact these guys. You know, it's one of those things where I delegate a lot now.
So how did you learn how to delegate? Because that is a extremely valuable skill that is not easy to develop. Although you do seem like you have a
You,
delegating personality.
well, I even upward delegate to my manager sometimes.
Uh-huh.
I have no problem delegating. It's a trust thing. It
Okay.
is a trust of I am going to send these people to you to do this, and I trust that your skills align with that and you can take care of this without an issue. So it's a trust thing. People who have a hard time delegating, it's because they don't trust that somebody else can do it. It's back to the whole if you want to do it right, do it yourself. Well, if you have a whole team and they are all trained, then they should be able to do it just as well as you are. So
So did this kind of, because this is a very unique mentality that you have around this, and I think it's extremely, and honestly, it's awesome to hear how you're managing things. This is, I'm taking mental notes because I think it is about trust. So how did you start to develop this framework? Is it just because like I can trust myself, I need other people that I can trust that will do this as well, and that's kind of where everything stemmed from? No,
no, what it stemmed from was 90-hour weeks.
that'll do it. That'll do it. So it was a necessary like way
Yes.
to change. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. It was one of those things where I can't do this by myself anymore. I need to put away the superwoman cape. These guys are trained. They can do it. I am now delegating,
So we
you know?
talk about aha moments. Was there an aha moment? Because you mentioned a 90-hour work week. Was there like a point where you realized like this isn't sustainable. Like I can't do this anymore. Was it like a specific event, or is it just like eventually you're just like, no, I just need to.
Sleep deprivation.
And I've also got a follow-up question with you talked about having that confidence and that faith in yourself to be able to accomplish the work that needs to be done and figure out the solution to a tough challenge. Would you say that sometimes that you are willing to give other people chances since you have that confidence
Yes,
yourself that you can believe in others as well?
I do. And I also believe that if, let's say I'm working on a project and it just gets to a point where my eyes are crossing and I just can't figure it out, I bring in a fresh set of eyes while I take a break, because it could be something as simple as a punctuation mark, but you're not seeing it because you've been staring at it too long, you know? And my team does the same. They'll be working on a project and they're like, Christina, I've gone over this 15 times and I'm not seeing what the problem is. I step in and I look at it with a fresh set of eyes and go, oh, it's right here. And they're like, oh, because sometimes that's what you need. You need a brain break to be able to refocus, and pulling in a second set of eyes sometimes is all that you need. So,
Right. And would you say that having that trust in others, letting go and letting someone else take the opportunity to learn, would you say that that comes full circle?
it does. It does. Because here's the thing, I'm a team lead. And so if I let my guys deal with projects that I have full confidence they can take care of, then the client then goes, oh, she delegated that. And that was a good choice. Now she's freed up to go over here and do this, So it does come full circle, because then the next time that they're like, oh, I need this. This is the person I used last time on that team. I'll reach out to Christina and ask her, hey, are they available to work on this for me? Because they did it last time, you know? And so you also start getting the client confident in the members of your team.
Right.
That's the other key thing. Because if they always work in the background, the client's never going to contact them because they don't know who they are. They don't know what they're working on, So that's another big thing. And that helps with, going on with promotions and stuff, because the clients also have a say in, our CSAT scores and stuff like that, that we're like, oh, so-and-so did blah, 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 blah. And then that gives my company an opportunity to be like, hey, maybe we should promote them up a level because they're taking on more responsibilities. So
Have you ever had a team member that was probably maybe a little bit, pensive or scared to take on something where you had to encourage them, be like, hey, you can
yes,
do this. Okay.
yes. And normally what I do is we have several systems. Most mainframe environments have a testing area. And so what I usually do is somebody who is confident in being able to do that task, I have them shadow the person who is not so confident. So I step back. I know it sounds weird, but some people do better with their peers working with them versus someone who is higher up the command chain, because they're more scared of, I don't want to do something wrong because I don't want, the manager or the team lead to be like, what are you doing? But their peers like, hey, back that up, fix this. So that's what I usually do, is try to pair them up like that. So that usually helps with their confidence levels.
Right. And then the peer who's helping them also gets to skill up and polish their skills as well. So it's like a twofold effect.
Yes, because my belief is if you tell me you've learned something, then you should be able to teach it.
Right. Right. That psychology that, the best way to enforce learning is through teaching. And I don't know if that's the exact quote, but something along
Yeah,
those lines. Yeah.
but it's true. It is true, because I did that a lot in the apprenticeship.
You did. And one thing I did notice, even, when we were, peers working at IBM, I remember you would see opportunities and you would kind of tap people on the shoulder and be like, hey, you should try for that. Not necessarily like a job opportunity, but an opportunity to learn. Like for me, example, I was on the ZVM team and we had a test system, and you're like, hey, you should try and run a little bit more about that. You should try and do this, because I was IPLing it and then shutting it down every weekend, but you would probe me with questions and challenges that helped me dig a little deeper. So it was a good experience there.
Yeah, we did a lot of, hey, come over to my desk. Let me show you something cool.
Yeah, we did. Yep.
It is very clear that you have built and are a very strong leader within your organization, and I'm very very impressed with how much you just learned as you went through, because it sounds like you're just like, this makes the most sense, so I'm gonna do it. And if you don't like it, well, like, too bad kind of attitude. So like, kudos to you. Like, that's pretty cool.
Well, it's growing up with the work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
efficiency.
Yeah, that's the big one. I will say though, with the people that are coming in newer to the mainframe, they have some advantages now that there's ZOSMF and Zoe and things like that, because they would probably feel more comfortable with those because they're GUI driven versus the green screen panel driven TN3270s. So, I mean, it's kind of a preference which way, people decide to learn. Me personally, I like old school.
So this is a interesting technical question. What do you think the advantages of learning with the green screen are versus learning using, like, Zoe and like VS Code? Like, do you think there's a distinct advantage to one or the other, or do you have like, I know you have your preference, but
Well, the good thing about learning the old school is that it doesn't matter what client you go to, because there are some clients that will not use ZOSMF, some government clients, banking clients. And it's because they look at it as a security risk using a web browser, So green screen, the traditional, you can work with any client. With ZOSMF, it depends on the client's preferences.
So what is the best way to learn? Like, because, one of the constraints to the mainframe, and I think there's a few resources you have, is you don't, like, if you're in college or if you want to learn more about the mainframe, you have a very limited way of interacting with the mainframe because you probably can't afford like a $10 million computer or something like that, right?
Well, that's where the master the mainframe comes in,
Right.
because it's giving you the emulator and you can actually see what it's like to be on a mainframe. I mean, it works out great. There are, I think, some other labs out there that they also use the emulators that you can use. So, I mean, there's opportunities. You just got to search for them.
So a few more questions and we'll go on to the growing to serve question. And you as a leader, I'm guessing sometimes if you're bringing someone new onto your team, there's things that you look for. And I'm kind of thinking that, on people who watch this, they're looking to get in the mainframe. What's something that someone who's just starting off on their career path and wants to get in the mainframe could do to really impress someone like you? Like, what's some knowledge they could show, or some like goal that they could achieve on their own to kind of bring to these like first interviews for mainframe positions that would really just kind of blow you away, you know?
The biggest one is, if they do master the mainframe, they're going to get the basics, going through ISP panels, that type of stuff, and seeing it, driving it a little bit. The other thing is the willingness to learn and adapt. That is the big one, is the willingness to learn and adapt. Because not all situations are going to be the same when it comes to problem resolution.
Makes sense. I suppose that's a bit more of a subjective kind of seeing how they handle an issue and how they overcome it. But I think just being able to navigate through ISPF and, use a green screen is a great starting point. So it's another shameless plug for Z Explorer, guys. It's a great starting point if you're listening into this conversation. Any other questions, Phil, on your side or anybody else on the call?
So you've definitely mentioned how, confidence and believing in oneself is a very key point of strength for you. Would you say that there was any other contributors to success that you've leaned on? Were there any tools that you used or allies that you leaned on that helped you through your journey?
Yes. Not again, it comes back to the pride thing. If you don't understand something and you find someone who will know, ask. And if they don't answer your question, find someone else and just keep going down it. Because sooner or later, you're going to find that one person who's like, you want to learn that? Oh, yeah, here, let me teach you. That's the big thing. Because there are some out there that, like I said, they're old school and they're very much, I'm going to keep all this information to myself, job security. I'm all about, I want to teach everybody on my team everything I know so I can take vacation.
There you go. Yeah, so
So,
true, so true.
So we had a lot of questions for you on the personal story, so I'm gonna try to wrap it up with a few questions on kind of the mainframe community for the last 7 to 10 minutes. But throughout this whole story, we've kind of heard you interacting with the community in different ways, or this idea of like mentorship kind of presenting itself. And one thing that I've kind of found really interesting is a lot of people on their mainframe journey have had a lot of interaction with the community, whether it's through the master mainframe or just like mentorship or interactions with different companies or like, even sometimes the open mainframe project, so what was your first interaction with the community from the mainframe specifically? Because it's a little different than your first interaction with the mainframe. Does that make sense?
so my first actual interaction with the community
Mhm.
was interviewing for the apprenticeship.
Okay. Yeah, that's a common one actually on this call is like, so you're just starting to get into it and you're like, oh, this is kind of who supports the mainframe. Was there a point where you're like, oh, this community is a bit different than other technical communities? Was there ever something like that, or are you just like, oh, this is just the mainframe community, this is just how they do it?
Um, Not really,
Mhm,
because every technical community has their own niche,
mhm.
but the personalities are pretty much the same.
That makes sense. So, you mentioned earlier on in this meeting that there was kind of earlier on when you were doing Master the Mainframe, you would answer people's questions on the forums. That's one example of you contributing to the community. Is there any other examples that you have where you've contributed to the growth and development of the mainframe community, or is there events or sessions that you do? Anything like that?
Well, like Phil said, I helped with some of the setup for, Master the Mainframe after I had
Yeah.
already taken it like 3 times. Um, but honestly, it was just a lot of people just reaching out to me, people name dropping and being like, hey, this is Christina. This is her email. You have a question, ask her. It was mostly that because I'm usually in my own little bubble.
It's the Christina community. That's what it
Yeah,
is,
pretty
right?
much.
Yeah, you can. So you're pretty open to people reaching, and I know you've said this multiple times. I just want to emphasize that you are very much here to help other people on their journeys if they have the desire to learn and reach out and start that conversation, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can join the Christina community, a subgroup of the mainframe community, everybody who's listening. I would highly recommend that. Um, so for those, people who are looking to transition into the mainframe, what would you say to them? Like, what's some advice that you'd give to them if they haven't yet made that transition or if they're looking to make that transition?
As silly as this may sound, at least take one class of coding. It doesn't matter what kind of language, but learn how to read it. I don't care if it's Python, Java, whatever it is. Because once you get that understanding, then when you go to mainframe, it's a lot simpler to, read JCL, write JCL, read Rex, write Rex. I'm not going to talk about assembler.
Uh, and
I
and
can change the variables in assembler. I cannot write it from scratch. I will say that.
right. I would also throw a plug in there, in addition to that, take a look at a terminal and, throw some commands around in a terminal and just see what it's like to see the prompts and what that looks like, because sometimes you got to go to the command line, right, Christina?
Oh,
Sometimes
yeah.
your panels aren't working and you got to go straight to the program or the application itself.
Well, and if they're familiar with, the Windows command prompt on Windows, the DOS, that also, and they understand that also helps. Because
Right.
GN 3270 is really not that complicated as long as you have the commands, right, Phil?
Right. That is exactly right. Yep.
So kind of rounding. Oh, did you have another question, Phil?
I was just gonna ask, if you're rounding up, I was just gonna ask if she had any advice, for anybody just generalistically that came to the top of her head.
Well, someone had said, JCL is not JCL, but it is. It's still a language. If you can understand coding language in general, yes, it's a different language, but it's the understanding of, hey, that's a variable. Hey, that's the output. Hey, that's the input. It's like every other language, it just has a different term attached to it. So,
Right. Yeah, this is what a job card is, and this is why it matters, or
yeah,
here's how we do Rex, whatever.
yeah. But no, my biggest thing is if they have the hunger to learn, the ability to work in an ever-changing environment, and the understanding that some days may be slow and some days may be hectic, but there's always opportunities for growth. That's the big thing.
You know what? I think that's a great point to end on, actually. Let's take that and run with it. That's great advice, Christina. I don't think there's another question I could ask that would get a better response than that. So, is there anything else that you want to talk about? And I've personally learned so much. So, this has been a great session. But like we already did the parting words, or not the parting words, but we already had a really good closing statement. But I want to make sure that you have all the opportunities to impart wisdom that you have. So, is there anything
Nope,
else?
that's about it.
Did we have any questions from any attendees? I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A, or in the chat. If anybody listening in has any questions, we'll go ahead and open it up to all of you, and feel free to ask away, and
Yeah.
we'll wait
Well,
here.
thank you so much for your time, Christina. Real
You're welcome.
seriously, it was a great session and I enjoyed hearing from you. And I think a lot of people in the community will enjoy a lot of what you had to share. So thank you so much for your time.
Devontae, did
Not
you
a
have
problem.
anything?
Oh no, thank you, Christina. This was really great. I definitely learned a lot throughout this session, so this has really been helpful. So thank you for speaking with us today.
You're welcome.
So real quick, Devontae, do you want to close us out with, just for those who are listening for the first time, on Mainframe Open Education and the community that we are part of?
Yeah, sure. So, for those of you that are new to this call, um, uh, all the panelists that you see here are part of the Open Mainframe project, part of the Mainframe Open Education community group, which is where we want to create a easier way for those new to mainframes to help them learn about it, gain skills, connect with mentors in this space, and then provide free education tools and awareness to help you get started on your mainframe journeys. Because, as you've heard, as you heard from Christina and a lot of our other guest speakers, is that the journey to mainframe can be a long and complicated road, but if you have all the right resources in front of you, it cannot be, it won't be that challenging. And we would love to have anyone here contribute to our efforts. So, Taylor, can you go to the next slide, please? All right. We currently have a open mainframe education Git book, and we have chapters 1 through 5, which dives into the core mainframe technology, what is enterprise computing, the different types of operating systems from hardware to software in the mainframe, different rows within the mainframe. You know, as you've heard from mainframes in the community, we typically don't stay in the same row for our entire careers. There's plenty of rows that we're moving around to different, different rows that require different skills. So it really is kind of not like a linear path. And in mainframes, especially with the Git book, you can learn more about different career path opportunities and see which ones interest you the most. And then also this Git book is created by people that are new in the community and then also seasoned veterans as well. So we really do have a good mix of knowledge sharing that we've created in this Git book. And if anyone has any content that they would love to share, reach out to us, let us know, and we can definitely get you added to the Git books. And that way you are so that way you're contributing to the next generation of mainframe learners. And Taylor, next slide.
And thank you, Kathleen Nordstrom, for providing some links in the chat for the Gitbook and Slack.
Yes, yes, thank you, Kathleen. And like I said, you can help us contribute by creating content. It can be from anything that you learned reading a book or on Z Explorer, either through an Interschool course, whatever learning you learned, we want you to contribute to it. And then also you do get a badge for your contribution. So you get to earn a badge for it and post about it on LinkedIn and bring other people with you, right? We want to get as many contributions as we can. So that way we can like fully create the content of this Git book because I wish that I had this Git book when I first started learning on mainframes. So I know that's definitely going to be really helpful to people coming up behind us, right? So we just want to develop the next generation of talent. So if anyone has any questions about the Open Mainframe project or either the Open Mainframe Education project, just feel free to reach out to anyone in the panelists here, and we would love to help you get started.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Devante.
everyone.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Christina. Everyone, you have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.